The 2010s to 20s horror fans have several movies and TV shows on their watch list. The anticipation of every horror fan increases tenfold whenever a new movie is announced, hoping it will scare them or blow their minds away. From the Conjuring universe to the It movies, The Vampire Diaries, Supernatural, or The Walking Dead, we have come across supernatural creatures of all kinds. But the 90s were as much a hit among horror fans. A lot of major hit horror shows emerged during the decade and ran for several years on television. Now, around 30 years later, most of them are forgotten. This is why we bring to you every major 90s horror TV show, to add some classic old-school horror to your watch list. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Tales from the Crypt, 1989 to 1996. Tales from the Crypt is a horror anthology series that aired for 7 seasons on HBO from 1989 to 1996. The series was hosted by the Crypt Keeper, a horrifying ghoul who made dark puns before the episodes would start. The show was based on EC Comics of the same name and featured many stories from the same comics on HBO. Each episode featured a different story with different characters and ran for 7 seasons. It was an uncensored show, which means it had no restrictions on graphic violence, nudity, etc. that were usually censored by other channels on television. It also became one of the first shows to feature Hollywood stars on TV, including celebrities like Brad Pitt, Christopher Reeves, Tim Curry, and Tom Hanks, among others. With an IMDb rating of 8 and 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, this show is among the best and a fan favorite in the horror genre to date. The X-Files, 1993 to 2002, aired for 9 seasons and revived for 2 additional seasons after over a decade. The X-Files is a science fiction show mixed with supernatural and horror. It revolves around 2 FBI detectives, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully. Mulder, a criminal profiler, believes in the existence of the paranormal, and Scully, a medical doctor, looks for scientific evidence of the mysterious cases that they come across. Mulder, being a conspiracy theorist, also believes in the presence of extraterrestrial life on Earth. Scully was skeptical, but after an incident with the aliens later in the show, she became a believer, connecting the paranormal with science. The duo took on the unsolved cases from the X-Files, where the paranormal phenomenon was also involved. Eventually, the detectives became a part of the larger conflict revolving around an alien invasion story arc. The show also featured several other monsters as villains. X-Files became a cult show, being one of the longest-running and most successful science fiction shows. This franchise also inspired 2 spin-offs and 2 theatrical films. The show itself was inspired by various other shows, such as Twin Peaks, The Twilight Zone, Kolchak, The Night Stalker, Tales from the Dark Side, and more. The X-Files has an IMDb rating of 8.6, even now. Goosebumps, TV series 1995 to 1998. The insane popularity of R.L. Stine's Goosebumps books in the 90s became the inspiration for the adaptation of this show based on them. The show aired for 4 seasons and became a favorite in the 90s. It is an anthology featuring tweens and young teenagers who find themselves trapped in unusual and scary situations involving the supernatural. Every episode focuses on these teens and how they escape the situations they are in, making you root for their survival. Each episode featured a different scary story from the books, showcasing the suspense and horror elements. The episodes featured different villains or creepy characters straight out of your nightmares. From a haunted mask and werewolves to a haunted house and creepy basement, the show featured it all. Goosebumps became one of the best horror TV shows, with an IMDb rating of 7.6 even today. The Outer Limits, 1995 to 2002. The Outer Limits is a science fiction anthology that aired 2 seasons on ABC from 1963 to 1965, was revived in 1995, and brought out 7 seasons. The revived version followed the same anthology format, but they also started featuring the already existing story arcs and tied them with other episodes. The production of the 7th season, which was the last one, was taken over by Sci-Fi from Showtime. Hence, it became completely free of swearing and nudity. Outer Limits had some standalone episodes as well as the recurring story arcs. The show won and was nominated for several awards, including the Emmys, which is considered the most prestigious television award, while the original series adhered to the Monster of the Week format, featuring a specific monster as the villain in each episode. The 1995 series departed from this convention. Instead, it showcased a variety of aliens and monsters without the constraints of a specific monster format. The focus shifted to exploring the scientific horrors that were impacting humanity. Are You Afraid of the Dark? TV series 1990 to 2000. Are You Afraid of the Dark is an anthology series following a group of children who called themselves the Midnight Society. Every night, the group would meet at a secret location in the woods and tell scary stories to each other. One person would be the night storyteller, transporting the viewers into a horror story world throughout the episode. The episode began and ended with this group, and most of it was a visual of the stories with different characters. They used to light up a fire after their arrival and drown it out when they left. Although the episodes were creepy, they always had a moral lesson towards the end. Being aired on Nickelodeon, the target audience of the show was kids and teens. Most of the episodes were stories from the imagination of these children and teenagers, but there were some episodes where the stories were inspired by the real lives of the storytellers. The uniqueness of the show is the imaginative yet chilling stories that the kids would come up with, which always left the viewers with a moral lesson. With a run of 7 seasons, the show has a rating of 8.2 on IMDb, making it among the top horror shows from the 90s.
They're forbidden dreams. Yeah, it all happens here, in this little place we call the Nightmare Cafe.
Nightmare Cafe, 1992. Nightmare Cafe was a short-lived show that ran for only 6 episodes before the low ratings led to its cancellation. Aired on NBC, the show's theme was science fiction and fantasy, but other elements such as horror, dark humor, and comedy were also included. As the title goes, the story is set in an unusual cafe that draws people to itself, usually by fate. The characters then get a second chance to make things right in their lives. If something they did in the past was morally bad, they had to atone for their sins, hence providing them with poetic justice. The cafe is the main point of the plot in the show, and it catalyzes a character story. It also has the power to transport the characters into different worlds. Unfortunately, the origins of the cafe were not explored in the 6 episodes. The show had a lot of potential, but sadly, it got cancelled. Even if it was short, the show had a lasting impact and is still counted among the best horror shows of the 90s, with reruns on Sci-Fi and NBC's Chiller in 2009. Beetlejuice, 1989 to 1991. After his 1988 classic film Beetlejuice, director Tim Burton decided to develop an animated television series of the same name. Beetlejuice ran for 4 seasons, from 1989 to 1991. The series is about a 12-year-old goth girl, Lydia Dietz, who is friends with the undead Beetlejuice, and together they explore the netherworld. It's a supernatural realm that is inhabited by monsters, ghouls, ghosts, zombies, and many more creepy creatures. Lydia lived in the mortal world and would summon Beetlejuice from Netherworld whenever she wanted. Beetlejuice pranked and conned people from both worlds and would take Lydia to explore the Netherworld with him. The series had a lot of context from several other famous movies, books, and shows, and made parodies of them towards the end of its run. As the original film wasn't targeted at children, ABC and Tim Burton himself came up with this animated series to involve kids as viewers as well. The imaginative world, wordplay, humor, and adventures of best friends Lydia and Beetlejuice are what made this show a good watch and a memorable one even to this day.
Tales from the Crypt Keeper.
Tales from the Crypt Keeper, 1993 to 1999. Based on the 1950s EC comic series and the live television series Tales from the Crypt, this animated horror series was made for kids. The graphic violence, blood, gore, and sexual content were completely removed. The Crypt Keeper, a ghoul who lived in a horror mansion, would narrate the stories in every episode. The stories were scary, but kid-friendly, with a moral lesson at the end of each episode, keeping in mind the target audience. The Crypt Keeper was also given a makeover in his cartoon version to make him look less scary and more kid-friendly for the target audience. The series ran successfully for 3 seasons and is considered among the best horror TV shows from the 90s.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
Courage the Cowardly Dog, 1999. Courage the Cowardly Dog is one of the most iconic animated horror shows. It ran for 4 seasons on Cartoon Network. The show featured a pet dog as the main character, who lived in a stranded house with his owners, an old couple, Muriel and Eustace. The 3 of them lived in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, a fictional town. Courage would encounter a new creepy villain in each episode. Even though he gets scared easily, he is the one who always defeats the villains and saves himself and his owners from bizarre and supernatural situations. Sometimes the villains were creepy humans, and other times they would be ghosts and monsters. Eustace, being the evil man with no love or empathy for Courage, would torture him, and Muriel would always be the one who cared the most for the dog. Even after 2 decades of its release, Courage the Cowardly Dog is still being aired in some places on Cartoon Network. It had elements of comedy too, along with horror. It equally entertained adults as well as kids, making it one of the most iconic cartoons from the 90s.
Erie, Indiana. My home sweet home.
Erie, Indiana, 1991 to 1992. Erie, Indiana is a horror science fiction show that aired for 1 season with 19 episodes. It originally aired on NBC and then again on Disney Channel. The show revolves around a teenager named Marshall Teller, whose family moved to a small town called Erie in Indiana. The town is desolated. Marshall became friends with Simon Holmes, the only other person who seemed normal in the town. They are faced with bizarre situations together in every episode. There are some comic elements as well in the show, but most of the plots are in a serious tone, giving the thrills of the chills of horror. The show also featured some suburban legends and some bizarre scenarios in which Marshall and Simon fought off together to save their community. A spin-off was also executed for the show, which was called Erie, Indiana, The Other Dimension, but it also lasted for 1 season, just like the original series.
No more running, son.
American Gothic, 1995 to 1996. American Gothic was a horror show that aired on CBS and ran for only 1 season until it got canceled. This show became a cult classic even after 1 season after receiving a lot of praise. The show is based in a fictional town in North Carolina, USA, called Trinity. The story revolves around Caleb Temple and the town's sheriff, Lucas Buck. Sheriff Buck is a murderous rapist who gains his power from the supernatural and manipulates people to do work according to him, either good or bad. Caleb's paternity was a mystery that he came to know about. His mother was raped by Sheriff Buck in front of his sister Merlin. The shock of having witnessed this horrifying crime traumatized Merlin from that day on, which added on and got worse when her mother committed suicide after giving birth to Caleb. In the pilot episode of the show, Buck murdered Merlin and manipulated her father into committing suicide so that he could claim his biological son Caleb after eliminating his current family. The arrival of Dr. Crower changes the course as he tries to solve the deaths of Merlin and her father. Together with Caleb and Merlin's recurring ghost, they uncover the sheriff's corrupt reign. Forever Night, 1992 to 1996. Forever Night is a TV series about homicide detective Nick Knight. But something is interesting about Nick. He is not human. Nick Knight is an 800-year-old vampire who, out of the guilt of centuries of killing, is now working as a detective on a night shift. This is his way of redeeming himself and lessening the burden of guilt. While working as a detective, Knight is also looking for ways to turn himself back into a human. Nick's real name is Nicholas, and his last name comes from the fact that he was an actual knight in medieval France. Only one human, Natalie, knows about Nick's truth. She is a medical examiner. Nick consumes packaged animal blood and takes the night shift to stay away from the sunlight. The series is a switch between the investigative crime show and the supernatural. Other vampires and creatures from the supernatural realm are also introduced during several episodes. Bone Chillers, 1996. Bone Chillers is a children's horror show that was inspired by the novels of the same name by the same creator. It ran for one season consisting of 13 episodes. The show revolves around 4 high school kids who are freshmen. The teenagers are trying to fit in with the changes, trying to be the cool kids at school, and also encountering the strange happenings that come their way. The school was haunted, and the kids had to deal with bizarre situations, a few of them being a teacher turning into a frog after accidentally eating toxic eggs, or the monsters from the drawings entering reality. Each episode had a different story with the same cast. Every story would feature a new villain, and the group of 4 protagonists, Brian, Kirk, Sarah, and Lexi, had to face them all, along with keeping up with their terrifying principal, Pussman. Although the show was inspired by the novels of the same name, and the author created it, only 3 episodes were inspired by the original novels. The rest were all original stories written by different writers for the show. Bone Chillers is a highly underrated horror show from the 90s, and even with one season, it left a huge impact and is considered one of the best even now. Millennium, 1996 to 1999. Millennium is a mystery thriller and horror show that aired for 3 seasons on Fox. It follows the story of an ex-FBI agent, Frank Black, who was now working as a consultant for a mysterious organization called the Millennium Group. Frank could see inside the minds of criminals. Millennium is a spin-off of another hit TV series, The X-Files. The first season mostly focused on mystery and thriller aspects. It was not until the second season that this show started focusing more on the horror aspects. The premise of the series was always dark and disturbing. After the series was canceled, an episode in the 7th series of The X-Files was titled Millennium, and it featured Frank Black, giving his story closure with this crossover. In 2018, Millennium was named among Rotten Tomatoes' 100 Best Sci-Fi TV Shows of All Time. A documentary titled Millennium, After the Millennium, was also released in the same year. The documentary was based on the show and features interviews with the makers and the cast. Charmed, 1998. Charmed is a fantasy drama series following the story of 3 sisters, known as the Charmed Ones, played by Shannon Doherty, Holly Marie Combs, and Alyssa Milano. Each sister possessed magical powers, and when they combined their powers, it's called the Power of 3. They are the most powerful witches who try to protect the lives of innocent people around them. While doing so, they also hide their magical powers from the world and live an ordinary life in the city of San Francisco. The powers of the sisters keep growing and evolving with time. The sisters fight with different foes from the supernatural realm, such as demons. The show ran for 8 seasons on the WB, and a reboot series was released in 2018 on the CW with a different cast. Charmed was named among the top 20 magic supernatural shows of all time in the Huffington Post and the 60 greatest sci-fi shows of all time in a list by TV Guide. Ghost Stories TV series, 1997 to 1998. Ghost Stories is a horror anthology television series that ran for 1 season with 44 episodes on the Family Channel. Every episode featured a different story, which was narrated by Rip Torn. Initially, the show started with showing 2 stories back to back, but later on, it was converted into just 1 story per episode format, showing a twist at the end of the stories, a format inspired by The Twilight Zone. The episode started with Rip Torn narrating and introducing it, and concluded with Rip Torn talking about the episode, which usually ended up with a moral lesson for the viewers. The Hunger, TV series 1997 to 2000. The Hunger is a horror anthology series that aired for 2 seasons. Each episode had a different story that was introduced by the host. The first season was hosted by Trent Stemp, who was replaced by David Bowie in the second season as the host. The episodes were centered around the themes of self-destruction and how desire and obsession lead to the end, and also featured elements like cannibalism, vampires, poison, and sex. The horror of how lust and power can lead to downfall is also portrayed in the show in the themes of softcore erotica. She-Wolf of London, TV series 1990 to 1991. She-Wolf of London is a horror series that follows the story of American graduate student Randy Wallace as she travels to Britain. Randy is in Britain to study mythology with Professor Ian Matheson. The duo develops an attraction for each other. As she spent one night out in the moors, a werewolf bit her. The local hospital concluded it was a rabid wolf bite, but Randy was not convinced. She had doubts about the wolf and thought he was a supernatural being and sought Ian's help. In this series, Randy and Ian are now looking for the cure for lycanthropy. Randy also starts going through transformations on every full moon as a werewolf, and Ian stays by her side. Meanwhile, other supernatural creatures also started showing up as Randy started drawing their attention to herself. She had to face creatures such as a spirit, zombies, and even another werewolf. Together, the duo faced these supernatural creatures while continuing their search for the cure. Later in the series, their search made them move back to America, to Randy's native place, California. This show ran for 1 season of 20 episodes. The old-school romance mixed with a horror style made it popular among horror fans. Todd McFarlane's Spawn, 1997. Todd McFarlane's Spawn, also called Spawn, is an animated adult superhero series. It was aired on HBO and ran for 3 seasons with a total of 18 episodes. The story revolves around former Marine Force Recon Lieutenant Colonel Al Simmons, who was also a government assassin in covert black ops. His supposed best friend betrayed him, eventually killing him off by burning him alive while on a mission. After he died, Simmons made a vow to take revenge on the man who killed him, named Chapel, and also to return home to his wife Wanda. Simmons' soul is now in hell because of the many sins he committed while being an assassin. In hell, the devil Malbolgia made a pact with Simmons. The pact suggested Simmons join the devil's army as a soldier. This was the only way he would be able to fulfill his vow and see Wanda, but he was tracked by the devil and returned to Earth after 5 years in a body that was not his. This new body was decaying and in a horrifying condition. When he reached out to Wanda, she was already married and had a kid with her new husband, who was Simmons' own best friend. As the series progresses, Simmons comes to know the main culprit behind his death. The dark turn of events takes place as Malbolgia unleashes his army from hell. The show is based on a character from Image Comics called Spawn. The show won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Animation Program, longer than 1 hour. Brimstone, 1998. Brimstone is a horror television series that aired for 1 season consisting of 13 episodes. It was aired on Fox. The story revolves around a detective who is dead, but has returned to Earth on a mission. The devil has assigned him to this mission, where he has to find and get the 113 souls who have escaped back to hell. The dead police detective is Ezekiel Stone. He was a New York City police detective when his wife was raped by a man called Gilbert Jacks. When Jacks was cleared of all the charges, it made Ezekiel angry, and he ended up killing the offender. 2 months later, he died in a different accident, and his soul arrived in hell for killing Gilbert Jacks. After spending 15 years in hell, there was a breakout where 113 souls escaped to Earth, the largest breakout that has ever been. The devil had to make a deal with Stone to help him bring the souls back to where they belonged. In return, Stone could get a second chance at life. The series became a hit and earned an 8.1 IMDb rating. Poltergeist, The Legacy, 1996 to 1999. Poltergeist, The Legacy was a horror television series that ran for 4 seasons. It tells the story of the members of a secret society called Legacy, which protects human beings from supernatural dangers. According to the story, Legacy was founded in the 6th century in England. They used to collect dangerous artifacts and knowledge about the ancient world that helped them protect humans from supernatural beings. The series is not related to the Poltergeist film series. The only connection that the two franchises have is the concept of legacy. The series is a mix of horror, science fiction, and mystery. The members of the Legacy were tasked with eliminating the supernatural threat that they had to face in different episodes. The series gained a lot of popularity, and a spin-off was also proposed, titled Poltergeist: The Beginning, but it never materialized. Marvelous verdict. From the 90s to the 2020s, horror has been a genre that has garnered many loyal fans worldwide. Horror has been stepping up the game with the creation of different franchises and universes of movies, television series, and books. Now, with the availability of OTT platforms, more and more fans are getting into the genre. It is not only about the good old ghosts, but also the zombies, demons, mythical creatures, and possessions, and now even the psychological horror that blows the audience's mind along with giving them the creeps. Horror creators enter the psyche of the human mind and are coming up with different concepts that were never seen before in this genre. The evolution, as well as holding on to the roots of this genre, has and always will receive all the love and anticipation from the old fans and the new. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.